Hi everybody, I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweiler with the National Weather Service, and I'm over here at the State Emergency Operations Center where we are deployed in support of ex-Typhoon Halong and its impacts across western Alaska. So we want to talk a little bit about where things have been for the past week or so, where they were yesterday and the weekend, and then where we're expecting the weather forecast to go in the coming days and weeks. So Halong Storm Center has moved well off to the east of the Alaska waters. It's now over the Canadian Maritime. And with that, we're expecting water levels and wind speeds to continue to decrease across the area as that storm system moves east. We do still have two coastal flood advisories. These have been downgraded from warnings down to advisories, and that's Kotzebue Sound through Point Hope until about 4 a.m. Tuesday, and then Point Hope through western Arctic coast until 10 a.m. on Tuesday. We still also have our flood advisory for the Kuskokwim River. This is basically from Bethel out to the mouth of the river, and that's just really because of all that water that got pushed in with that storm surge coming up the river. We do have that out until 6 p.m. this evening, so be advised if you're in any of those areas, we do still have advisories, and we want folks to take caution, especially as they work on doing recovery efforts. So taking a look at some of our numbers from Halong and what exactly happened. We set some pretty significant records. In Kipnuk, you had water levels at 6.6 feet above your normal highest tide line. So that smashed the previous record from 2000, and that was at 4.7 feet, so almost 2 feet above the previous high tide record. In Kwingillingok, you were at 6.3 feet above the normal highest tide line. Again, just crushing an old record of 3.1 feet from back in 1990. So a 35-year-old record and well above 3 feet in advance of that former record. How about our winds in terms of how strong things were at? Kuslavek, you had 170 miles per hour. Tuksuk Bay was at 100 miles per hour. And just to give you a frame of reference, those wind speeds would be the equivalent of a Category 2, a high-end Category 2, almost Category 3 hurricane. So very significant. We also saw strong winds between 70 and 100 miles per hour for much of the western portions of the state, also firmly into that Category 1 hurricane. So you're familiar with that category scale, and we don't oftentimes talk about hurricanes in Alaska, but that's how strong those winds would be in the equivalents. Looking at our satellite loop here, you can see the remnants of the former typhoon are now well off northeast of the state, and they continue to track to the east. Much more disorganized now that it's lost its upper level support and starting to see things really improve across the west coast. Definitely saw some plume of moisture associated with that, but that is also moving off to the east. And it's good news for recovery efforts that really we only expect some gusty winds, but marginally gusty, maybe 15 to 25 miles per hour, and some showers as we start to help out on the areas of the west coast. So we do want to talk about what's to come as we work on those recovery efforts for those communities. And what we're looking at now is one more storm system in the queue, and it's moving along the Aleutian chain, and it'll eventually move up towards southwest Alaska. So here we are Tuesday morning. You can start to see wind speeds onshore about 20 miles per hour from the southwest Tuesday morning. As we get to Tuesday afternoon, there is that area of low pressure starting to get a little bit stronger and wrapping up. Gusts about 35 to 45 miles per hour. But the orientation is really the important thing I want to draw your attention to. Those winds start to come out of the southeast, and then eventually, even as they peak here in the 40 to 45 miles per hour range, they come out of the east-southeast. That helps to bring the winds offshore and usually keeps the water from being able to climb up and surge inland, and instead it goes the other direction. So even though we have another storm system, we do expect water levels to be significantly lower than what they were with ex-Typhoon Halong. And then eventually by Wednesday afternoon, that system moves over into the Gulf of Alaska, and we start to see a little bit weaker winds as they come out of the west there on the backside of that storm system Wednesday afternoon. So with that storm system, again, just to recap, 35 to 40 miles per hour expected for the Kuskokwim Delta. Tuesday night through Wednesday morning is going to be your peak wind. And water levels forecasted nowhere near what they were, and really only impacting Kwingillingok and Kogignac, and that's because of the orientation of those winds. The highest tide each of those days will be early in the morning between 4 and 7 a.m., and so it'll be still in the dark hours, so be advised on that. Water levels are expected to be about 1 to 2 feet above normal highest tide line, and again, referencing about 6 feet for this past system. And just to give you a graphical of how that would look, there was the forecast for ex-Typhoon Halong, and here we are looking at the forecast for Wednesday morning. And even this forecast is probably still a little bit on the high side. We're really probably only going to see about 1 foot above that highest tide line. So a significant downward trend even as we watch that next system approach Southwest Alaska. So a quick recap. Winds continue to calm and water levels are generally dropping as the ex-typhoon moves away from the state of Alaska. We do have another weather system that we're going to keep watching, and that'll move along the Aleutian chain Tuesday night and impact Southwest Alaska, but we expect those winds to be lower and the water levels to also be lower. Active storm pattern is going to persist for the next week to 2 weeks, so we do want folks to stay tuned. We will do our best from the National Weather Service side of things to keep our partners here at the state up to date and keep you up to date as well. Thanks for joining us.